Tonight, myself and Morbid for Fun are going to be diving into 8 disturbing and creepy RBI stories. So sit back, relax, and let's step into the darkness. This Redditor came to the RBI subreddit to share their mother's disturbing story about the time that they were almost abducted. But disturbingly, the story continues, because OP has found out that their mother's story eerily lines up with the unsolved cases of a number of missing girls. Growing up, my mum would tell me a cautionary tale about how she was almost abducted as a child. It always stuck with me, but as I got older and got into true crime, I decided to ask her for more details. Here's what she told me. She was around 12 or 13 years old, living in Jacksonville, Florida. She and a neighborhood girl were playing outside when a man approached and offered them a ride to the gas station. They accepted, but during the ride, the man drove past the gas station. They then realized that the passenger side door handles were broken off and they couldn't get out. The other girl fought back. She had a cigarette and used it to burn the man, which caused him to pull over and let them out. The police were called. Somehow, they found the man and arrested him. My mum testified in court, but the case was dismissed. She doesn't remember the exact reason, but thinks it has to do with some of the car details not matching up. Still, she's certain it was the same man who tried to abduct them. The broken door handles part really disturbed me. That seems like a calculated move, like he'd done this before or planned to again. It made me wonder if this guy was connected to any other cases, so I started googling things like the Jacksonville 1970s. Nothing useful came up, but when I searched Missing Girls Jacksonville, I found something chilling. The case of the 5 missing girls from Jacksonville around the same time period. There's a reporter named Catherine Jeffries who's done extensive reporting on those cases. I looked up the dates and locations, and my mum's attempted abduction would have happened within about a year of those disappearances. Her old house is only a few miles away from where some of those girls vanished as well. I called the Jacksonville Cold Case Unit and spoke to an officer. She just said, "Old case, so it's gonna take a while to look into," and I never heard back. I also emailed the reporter and gave her all the info I had. Then I tried to request the case records, but Jacksonville court records told me I needed the suspect's name in order to get anything, which we don't have. My mum doesn't remember it, and her family didn't keep any paperwork. To be honest, the Jacks police were really dismissive, and the records person was very rude. I ended up feeling totally deflated and just gave up. But it still nags at me. What if this guy was connected to those other cases? My mum also wants to know why her case was dismissed. We both want to know if her testimony could have helped stop someone. So here are my questions. Are records from dismissed cases in the 1970s still kept anywhere? Is there any way to request those records without the suspect's name? Are there other ways I could try to get law enforcement to re-examine her case as a possible lead related to those 5 missing girls? Is it worth filing a Freedom of Information Act request, or would that even help? Any help, advice, or ideas would be greatly appreciated. I know it's been decades, but I don't want to let this just disappear like it didn't matter. The first thing that immediately stands out about this case are the broken door handles. As OP touched on, this move seems extremely calculated, and with this taken into account, there is no doubt in my mind that this is a thing that proves the man's sinister intentions. Not only is this move premeditated, but it also indicates that this is a person who has done this before. The fact that he's taken extra steps to make sure that there was almost no escape means that this is likely not his first time attempting something like this. The fact that this case was dismissed as well. Not only has the justice system not put this man behind bars, but in doing so, they have failed his victims entirely. And that does highlight how broken the justice system can be. There's a reason why in the USA, it's estimated that less than 4% of sexual crimes in particular result in a conviction. There is no excuse for this, and there's also no excuse for the small sentences that a lot of extreme offenders get. And there's definitely no excuse for a man like this to have gotten away scot-free. Commenters asked OP to ask their mum for more details, specifically details about how he looked, what he was driving, etc. And thankfully, they obliged. At the time, their mum recalls that they were living in the San Mateo neighbourhood in North Jacksonville. They also remember that the man looked like a young Jeffrey Dahmer, with his blonde hair and all. She explains her reasoning for this description more, and says that he was more in his style, clean cut with a comb over. On the car, she remembers that it was a Gremlin, or a similar type of car with a flat back. She doesn't remember what colour it was, but does recall that one of the discrepancies in the girls' statements was whether it had stripes on it or not. Opie tried to call up the court records office to get more information, but they told RBI that the person on the phone wasn't really helpful, and simply told them to phone back when they had a name. They did mention that their mother was willing to phone up and get more information about the case herself, since she was one of the people involved in it, and said that he would update if she did go ahead with that. He also mentioned that he phoned up the library in Jacksonville to see if they had any records about the case or the incident. They said that he would have to come in person and someone would help him narrow down his search. And so, he mentions that he wanted to plan a detour to the library when he was going to Jacksonville for a family event. And months after the original post, Opie would provide this update. Hi RBI, I wanted to give a small update and also ask for advice. I've been trying to figure out how to locate any kind of record related to the incident with my mom, and I really want to thank everyone who offered tips and insight on my original post. I'll be coming down to Jacksonville in November for Thanksgiving, and I'm planning to arrive a few days early so that I can spend some time at the library going through archives. What I've found so far while googling the Jacksonville Library's microfilm hours, I came across a Facebook post in History Jacksonville that mentioned a large portion of the Florida Times Union has been digitized and is available for a site called Newsbank. I messaged the person who made the post and asked if that upload might include court documents, and they mentioned that there's a free trial, so I got one. The database actually seems pretty thorough, and I was able to find information about my family who lived in Jacksonville and also in Orlando. To look for my mum's case, I've been searching abduction or kidnapping in the 1971 to 1975 range. While I've been searching for my mum's case, I've been saving any articles that sound similar, especially ones involving abductions or attempted abductions involving a car. But I haven't found anything that really seems promising. I've spent a few hours looking so far, and I plan to get the monthly subscription so I can keep going for a few more weeks. I'm not finding many court dockets yet, mostly newspaper articles, but I'm going to keep checking. If anyone else here has access to Newsbank, or is an FSCJ student/employee with access, and you see something similar to my mom's story, please feel free to message me what I could use advice on. One thing I'm unsure about is whether Newsbank contains all of the newspaper records from that time period, or just a large selection. Since I'll be in Jacksonville soon, I'm trying to figure out how to best use my time while I'm there. Should I go with my mom to a court records office and ask in person about her case? Or is there a chance that the library might have materials that aren't included in Newsbank? Any tips or advice would be appreciated, especially from anyone familiar with Florida's public records or older newspaper archives. Also, I've been considering posting on Facebook to try and find the other girl in the situation. I had deactivated my account for a while, but recently reactivated it. I will likely do that once I've exhausted the Newsbank database. Thanks again to everyone who commented on my first post and helped point me in the right direction. While OP has definitely found a great lead, as one commenter pointed out, the library may have many more newspapers available than Newsbank. This is definitely the case if OP can find out whether they may have archived smaller, local newspapers as well. This is still an ongoing situation, and in November, I will hopefully have an update to provide you on if OP has finally managed to track down this case. But there are many more details involved, including a case with eerily similar stories. To sum it up, in the summer of 1974, 5 young girls went missing in Jacksonville. The suspect was described as a white male with light-coloured hair in a style that was similar to Elvis Presley, and was reported to have driven many different vehicles. These included a blue bike, a white car, and a red Volkswagen Beetle. Some commenters believe that OP's mum's case may be connected to these disappearances, and for all we know, they very well could be. But for now, the story is over. But hopefully, there are many positive revelations to come in the near future. What if you were on call to your partner while you slept, and the next day you woke up to a voicemail from yourself? So I'm still pretty young and in love with my girlfriend that I don't live with, so we sleep on FaceTime almost every night. I make sure that I mute before I fall asleep. This morning particularly, I wake up having a voicemail from an ATL GA number. Being from Michigan, this is weird. I go and listen to the voicemail, and it's the audio of the very same Minecraft YouTube video that I fell asleep to. I hear the guy talking about things from the game, and I even hear it mention the YouTuber's name. I genuinely am freaking the out because I was, and am at the time of typing this, actively on the same call I was before I fell asleep. The creepiest part is that this voicemail is 3 minutes long. Someone was listening to me sleep through my phone for 3 minutes last night. I reverse phone look up the number and there was nothing to be found. The only thing in my room that could possibly pick up my audio are my phone and my Alexa. However, I changed the wake word of my Alexa so as to not accidentally activate it. If anybody has any clues or ideas, please share them with me, as this is a truly unsettling thing to have to wake up to on a workday. Very disturbing. I don't even know how I would feel if I woke up to a creepy recording of myself that I didn't take. Along with the post, OP also attached this video of the voicemail.
And after a few hours of practice, I felt more comfortable with the mace and was ready to unleash it on my steel, which the first potential use came when Mavic was challenged to 1v1 by Prince Zan.
In the comments section, they noted that apart from the call and the voicemail, nothing else seemed off. When they woke up, they were still on FaceTime with their girlfriend, the call that had started the previous night, and they mentioned that their phone was on Do Not Disturb, and they were already on an existing call, so it should have immediately declined. To make matters even more confusing, OP also mentioned that their girlfriend had muted while they were both asleep, meaning that absolutely no audio should have been picked up by OP's phone. They also went into their phone settings and found out every app that had access to their microphone: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Discord, and GarageBand. None of these apps made the call, so that essentially rules out his phone as the culprit. And with that, there is one remaining suspect. OP took a look through Alexa's activity and found out that during the night, the person in the video that he had been playing had said the words "find my phone." This triggered the Alexa and it made the phone call. Since OP was asleep, he obviously didn't answer, and even though he says he usually mutes his Alexa, he forgot to this night, and thus, it left him a creepy voicemail to wake up to. So although this story ended in a positive way, take it as your reminder that all those devices around your home, they are always listening. I just wanted to quickly say that if you're enjoying this video, it would mean the absolute world to me if you like it, subscribe to the channel, and hype the video. Make sure that you turn on my post notifications as well so that you never miss an upload. I also just launched my brand new membership system, Jessicur Plus. For $7.50 per month, you can get access to over 100 videos, including banned and uncensored videos that were too much for YouTube. You will also get exclusive access to my breakdown of my real life predator catch, which won't come to YouTube for a good while. Go to jessicur.com if you are interested, and for people who didn't skip this part, here's a code on screen right now for a free month to get you started. It can only be used by one person, so get in quick. But without further ado, let's get back to the video. I'm sure, like me, you've been at a gig and recorded some videos, but what if, when you look back at them, the audio was completely different? I recorded a few videos at a show last night, and when I went to watch them, they all had completely different audio from what the show actually was. It sounds like someone reporting a crime. How could that be? I can still hear the show faintly in the background, but mostly it sounds like someone's reporting a crime or talking about a crime. I took a video this morning to see if it happened again, but it did not. How could this have happened? Could I have tapped into something? Should I be worried about my phone? Commenters immediately asked OP if they had any apps running in the background while they were recording that could have caused this issue. They say that it is possible, and suggested that it could be from the Citizen app, one that allows you to get real-time safety alerts and reports from your local area. Apparently, this is quite a common thing, and a lot of people have found themselves running into a similar experience as OP. But another Redditor came with another likely conclusion. According to OP, the artists were using wireless microphones, and because it does sound like radio interruption, one commenter believes that it could be picking up signals from outside the venue. The person who came up with this theory recalls that they had experienced something similar in the past, being able to speak to truckers through their karaoke machine. But others aren't so sure, as they say it would also be coming out of the big speakers in the venue if this were the case, not just OP's phone. Believe it or not, this isn't the first time that something strange like this has been caught on video. In 1969, a man called Mel Williams had recorded a band in a local bar. Unknown to him at the time, he hadn't just recorded the band, but also the conversation between two men sitting nearby. Williams didn't listen to the tape back until the early 2000s, but what he heard was incredibly disturbing. On the tape, one of the men recorded, called Clyde Peterson, has bragged that he, Jack Golfair, and an unnamed third person were responsible for the disappearance of a woman called Evelyn Hartley, who went missing in 1953 at the age of 14. This was the first real lead in the case, but by the time this was discovered, all of the men were dead. To this day, her case remains unsolved. As for OP, this is pretty much the only conclusion that we have, that it was either the Citizen app or a radio frequency that wasn't intended for our ears. Imagine you swiped someone on a dating app, and before you know it, they're popping up everywhere. I believe I may be being stalked or fixated upon by a man. I am a 22-year-old female who first downloaded the dating app Hinge in July of 2025. I matched with a 34-year-old male and we chatted very briefly for about 3 or 4 days. Nothing suggestive or out of the norm. I decided to take a break from dating and deleted the app, disappearing mid-convo. This person happens to live in my small to medium-sized city, about 100,000 people. I work in a popular, trendy retail shop, so I see random people come in and out every day. After deleting the app though, I see said person coming into the store more often on weekends. The person never buys anything or never tries anything on, just sort of lingers about. I don't think anything of this, and in September of 2025, I re-download Hinge. Right off the bat, said person is one of my first likes, and I rematch. We begin speaking on Tuesday and everything seems normal. My workplace and location of workplace is mentioned, unfortunately, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. On Saturday night, as I am walking out of work and home with my other two co-workers, I receive a message from said person via Hinge, telling me that he just walked past me on the street. This is odd to me because 1, we never met in person, just chatted online, and 2, the only person I did see had his head down and hands in his pockets, keeping a low profile. I begin to think something is up and this is weird, so by Sunday night, I break things off via Hinge. I delete the Hinge app, cutting off any and all communication, as I never gave this person my number or social media. He just knows my name and where I work. Skip to Monday evening, and as we were preparing to close at around 6 PM, said person comes into my workplace. The store is fairly quiet, just a couple of people looking around. I do not notice the person at first, and he lingers for about 5 to 10 minutes, not buying anything, not speaking to anyone, not trying anything on, just being there, pretending to look at pants. It is seconds before this person leaves the store that we make the most intense, terrifying eye contact. Then he leaves, and I haven't heard or seen him since. It's been a couple of days. What do you guys think? Am I being overreactive here? Is this behaviour abnormal and consistent with that of premature stalking? Right off the bat, this definitely sounds like the case of a stalker. Coming into the store since July, but not seeing him in there beforehand is a major red flag, especially considering how often he seems to visit. As one commenter points out, it's definitely wise for OP to let their co-workers know about the situation, because this is not normal, and we don't know how dangerous this man could potentially be. The last incident brought up by OP stands out as the most disturbing, because he purposefully chose to come into the store around closing time, knowing that OP would be alone and leaving the building soon. This could also indicate that he has a rough idea of OP's schedule, which is very creepy, and OP has every right to be worried. Another thing that OP should definitely do is make a police report. If something sadly were to happen, it is very good to have it all noted down on record already. That way, the police know who they are looking for and the previous circumstances. Thankfully, we have an update on the situation, and it seems as though he might have finally left OP alone. They say that after the eye contact incident, it has been 2 weeks since they last saw him. Nothing weird has happened, and they have received no attempt at contact. So hopefully, OP can now live in peace, knowing that the stalker has given up. But as they pointed out in the comments, for all we know, they could still be watching from afar. In September, one Redditor posted to RBI to get some help with their search. They were trying to find a plane that had been missing since 1978. Maybe the RBI can help me out. Only so much I can do solo here on my end. I have been investigating and chasing down every lead I can, and reviewing every document I can get my hands on. Would just love some outside opinions. December 23rd, 1978. Pilot Art Underwood takes 3 people aboard his aircraft in Indian Head, Saskatchewan. They are the Talbot family. Chet, Betty, and their son, Sheldon. Art wants to visit his parents in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the Talbots want to see their daughter, who lives at 100 Mile House, British Columbia. Art agrees to drop them off at 108 Mile House on his way to Kamloops. The Talbots will drive from 108 Mile House to 100 Mile House and spend their Christmas with their daughter and son-in-law. The trip is such a last-minute arrangement that the Christmas presents have already been mailed ahead. Bad weather makes Art rethink his route, and they decide to land in Red Deer, Alberta, around late morning or midday. They stay overnight at a local lodge, put the plane in a hangar overnight, and refuel. The next day, Art phones from the lodge twice throughout the morning, checking the weather with the local authorities. At 10:27 MST, December 24th, they take off from Red Deer Airport, and are never seen again. The search lasts nearly 2 weeks. Brutal temperatures and snowfall prohibit civilian searchers from getting their planes off the ground. The plane is never found. Now let's talk about the pilot, Art Underwood. Between 31 to 35 years of age, 7,000 to 9,000 flight hours. Testimonies say that he is an excellent pilot with experience flying in the bush, Arctic and the Canadian territories. He is qualified on various aircraft types and does a fair amount of charter work and crop spraying. Witness testimonies reveals he doesn't care to follow roadways and prefers to go direct when possible, and has a small tendency to push the weather on occasion, but is still one hell of a good pilot. His father, having flown as a pilot in World War II, reinforces this and mentions that Art was very religious about keeping within radio contact. He was considered to be extremely capable in the bush, and several people mention that if he survived the crash, he would do everything to get his passengers out alive. The passengers: Chet Talbot, 60, Betty Talbot, 47, and Sheldon Talbot, 20. Also on board is Art's dog, Brandy, a bird/hunting dog. All were dressed in warm clothing: gloves, good down jackets, footwear, etc. The plane: a Cessna 185F, manufactured in 1975, registration C-GCZH, new to Art, who had roughly only 10 hours on that particular plane, but in good shape overall as reported by mechanics. White with red trim, and allegedly an insignia of a moose on the tail. Additionally, the man who operated the hangar in Red Deer stated that the words La Pointe Air Services was painted about 1.5 inches wide on the side of it. No major maintenance concerns, but testimony reveals that the artificial horizon had been acting up, and the filter had been replaced before leaving Indian Head. On one of the last trips before the ill-fated flight, a passenger recalls Art mentioning the oil pressure starting to drop. Hangar staff theorized that his oil cooler had failed, but the equipment list had a non-congealing oil cooler installed on that particular plane. Radio equipment listed as VHF and HF. The pranks. 2 children report finding wooden boards in the Bow River in Calgary, dated December, with the following messages. Please help. I crashed somewhere in the mountains. We are from Indian Head, Saskatchewan. Some are hurt bad. Don't know where we are. Message 2. Help us, Indian Head. Sask. Hurt bad. Message 3. Please help us, Indian Head. Lost. Hurt bad. The boards are found in the summer of 1979. Investigators go upriver to the Beerspaw Dam, and the superintendent informs them that, due to low spring runoff, no spillage had occurred, and that there was no possibility that the boards had came from above the dam. They search the area beneath the dam and find rocks and other items with graffiti that matches the handwriting style, and are convinced it is a hoax. Also noted in the report is the following statement. The second point of interest was the report that came in from a 12-year-old boy, 14 miles west of Rimbey, who had heard calls for help on his walkie-talkie sets that he had received for Christmas. These messages were heard on Boxing Day and 2 subsequent days. The RCC said at the time that the boy was sincere, but that he might have been the victim of a hoax perpetrated by a nearby individual. This boy would go to the press in 2014 and retell his story of events. The flight path is unknown, but in taped interviews with hangar staff and other individuals, it is revealed that Art likely flew Red Deer to the Rocky Mountain House and into the mountains from there. The hangar staff corroborated this, as one individual even viewed Art's charts and maps with him, and went as far as to state, "From what I understood, the routes he was going to use was from Red Deer to the Rocky VOR and then into the Nordig Pass." The investigators agree and say as much in the official summary. Based on the weather related to him, the pilot no doubt planned to fly direct to the Rocky Mountain House VOR available, and hence attempt a direct flight to 108 Ranch. Why does this matter? Rocky Mountain House is a 45-minute drive from Rimbey. From what I can gather, the man in the article lived, as a crow flies, just 35 kilometers away from the airport in Rocky Mountain House. Had Underwood taken a direct routing from YQF Airport, he would have encountered worsening weather in the Rocky Mountains, beyond VFR limits, and likely beyond his ability to get out of. There is a strong chance that he flew into a box canyon and was unable to turn out in time. In 2018, a poster on an Alberta outdoors forum claimed he discovered the wreckage in 1992 in Adams River Valley, BC, and that he escorted Transport Canada and RCMP to the site. After speaking with the Transportation Safety Board, they confirmed that they have no record of a report, and the plane remains missing as recently as this week. As the TSB was formed in 1990, they would have been the authority that investigated the crash in 1992. In summary, and through the comments that the 12-year-old made online years later in that same outdoors forum before going to the press, I believe that the plane may actually lie somewhere in the foothills of Alberta. A very interesting mystery. There was a huge search conducted for the plane at the time, with the Canadian Air Force even getting involved. The civilian search and rescue teams also clocked in around 1,100 hours of flight time looking for the aircraft. OP suspects that if it didn't fly full speed into a mountain and disintegrate, which is unlikely due to a detail that we will discuss in a second, then it is possible that it crashed in a heavily wooded area that would be hard to see from above. Even more so now that everything will be overgrown. Years later, the local 12-year-old boy, whose name is David Reynolds, claims that he actually spoke to a dying Betty in the days following the crash. He said that he had always found Christmas hard, and after a lot of discussion, it turns out that he had actually pushed that memory down, but it came back to haunt him years later. Using walkie-talkies that were given to him by his uncle for Christmas, David and his cousin had heard a voice on Christmas Eve. The voice identified herself as Betty Talbot. Keep in mind that this was before the disappearance and search effort was made public. It's also important to note that these weren't just regular walkie-talkies, but rather discarded airline communication devices that has previously served a real purpose. Betty told David that the plane had crashed, people were injured and presumed dead, and she needed help. David told his family, and of course, they called the police. When first contact was made, Sheldon was the only other person alive alongside Betty. However, when they checked in the next day, she revealed that her son had not survived the night. Another day passed, and although efforts were ongoing, Betty was clearly angry that no one had turned up to save her yet, and disturbingly, the day after that, there was no response on the other end. Betty was gone, and likely dead. Now, years later, David is heavily involved in the search and determined to find out where the plane crashed so that he can finally put this disturbing memory to rest. However, the police did take his walkie-talkie in for analysis, and it proved that it would have never been able to hear and speak to an aircraft transceiver. However, it is likely that there was a GRS walkie-talkie on board the aircraft that survived the crash, and it's unlikely that Betty would have known how to work a proper plane radio anyway, and that's if it was even working. So I really don't want to discount David's story because there are far too many details that line up, and a lot of people that can confirm it as being true, even the police themselves. One commenter actually thought that they may have found a lead, linking Google Maps coordinates of a white object that they thought might be part of a plane. OP says that this is likely just tree downfall, and because it is so close to a campground, it would have likely been noticed way sooner if it actually was a plane. Another commenter also chimes in, saying that they fly a similar model of plane nowadays and it is too small to be a possibility. If anyone is interested in helping to solve this mystery, I'll leave the coordinates of the false lead on the screen right now. With everything taken into account, it is likely near this area. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one who makes the difference.
A few months ago, a Redditor came to the RBI subreddit terrified because inside of their home, they had made a disturbing discovery. I've been renting this apartment for 4 to 5 months now. I am here on and off, My girlfriend lives abroad, so I stay here a month, then go back to my country for a few weeks, etc. Recently, I tried to move the desk in my apartment as I wanted to make a DIY den for my rabbit, and I wasn't using the desk much. This is when I realized it was plugged to something behind the wardrobe. They were next to each other. There was this black wire, and I followed it to a small compartment under the desk where a camera was very covertly installed and covered in black tape. The camera was basically positioned so that it perfectly records the groin area for someone sitting down on a chair in front of the desk. I guess it could also record the bed, but it didn't have a clear direction towards it and could only record maybe 25% of the lower part of the bed. The camera was fully covered in black tape, except for the small objective, so the light on it wouldn't be visible when turned on. The person who put it here had made sure of this by also covering the whole inside of the desk compartment with black tape and cutting a hole through it only for the objective. I can't explain it better, but the setup was hardly noticeable at all. When I went to the police station, 2 officers drove me to my house and investigated who lived here before me. Apparently, it was an escort who people had filed similar complaints against. Similar from what they said, but they didn't go into much detail. I'm having a hard time figuring out why an escort would use such a setup, and I can't really stop overthinking it. If it was for blackmail, then why place the camera at such a low angle that it couldn't easily capture faces or identifiable features? Why exactly the perfect position to capture someone sitting at a desk? Why a Wi-Fi camera as opposed to a memory card one? The whole building has Wi-Fi, but why would an escort need remote access to the camera even while she's absent? Why positioned in such a place that you could barely capture the feet, legs of someone laying on the bed and not the whole act? The wire was also taped to the back of my wardrobe with scotch, and it's clear from the setup that the desk has always been in the same place. My apartment is also a very small studio apartment, so not much room to fiddle with the bed's position. We are talking matter of inches. I have so many questions about this, and I'd really appreciate some insight. A lot of students and kids have lived in this apartment before me, as it's close to a school, and the landlady's husband would often unlock the door even if I wasn't home or didn't open when he was knocking, just to showcase it to a potential tenant before I had asked him to stop, and tell him that I'm staying here long term. One time, he brought this 14-year-old with her mother to show her the apartment. I'm a guy, so I couldn't really care less if he spied on me, as I got nothing to hide. But as I mentioned, kids lived here before me, which is why the officer's conclusion seemed kind of unthoughtful to me, given the possible threat here. Alongside the post, the OP also attached a video showcasing how the camera was originally positioned. So we've got a camera that can be accessed remotely, and a seemingly purposeful setup to accommodate it, and very little help from the police. Commenters jumped to the conclusion that this was most certainly the doing of the landlady's husband, who OP mentioned had previously entered the apartment without the consent of the tenant on multiple occasions. It was pointed out that this entry alongside the hidden camera would likely be a massive violation of the tenancy agreement, but without OP revealing the fine print of what was stated in the contract they signed, we can't be 100% sure. Tech-savvy Redditors decided to take a deeper look at the camera itself and the setup, and concluded that this was definitely an amateur gig, although they pointed out that it would be almost impossible to trace who was connected to it unless OP had lots of disposable income. They recommended printing out a piece of paper to go in front of it, alerting the person on the other end that OP knows what they are up to. They also urged OP to check the rest of their studio apartment because this camera can apparently be purchased for as cheap as $40, meaning that it's likely there could be more dotted around. As it turns out though, when the situation was investigated by the police, they decided to call up the landlady and her husband to make them aware of what's going on. This is the update the OP finally provided and how they reacted. When the cops called the couple about the camera, which the landlady denied even knowing about it and said it was definitely not them, they were on vacation at a beach. Well, they are apparently back, and today when my girlfriend and I were in front of the building, we saw her husband working in the garage. He went up to us himself and started explaining the situation to my girlfriend in her language. I couldn't understand much, but she translated to me afterward. Turns out that now his explanation is that the camera was owned by some ex-tenants and that it wasn't plugged in. He said the reason it was still in my room is because he refused to give it back to them because they owed him rent money. He also asked where the camera is now. She told him the cops confiscated it, and he said we shouldn't have called the police. Kept a $40 camera to break even with the ex-tenants, and didn't even bother uninstalling the setup before. Seems suspicious to me, especially since the wife denied even being aware of it when she spoke to the cops. Also, he mentioned nothing about that lived there, which the police told us about. This explanation makes even less sense. This update basically proved what we all already suspected, that OP is going to get nothing of use out of the landlady and her husband. They will continue to deny any knowledge of the camera, but through trying to explain how it could have possibly gotten there, they are actually digging themselves a much deeper hole, especially when they are not even taking the adult worker theory into account. OP says that the police took the camera in as evidence and they haven't posted to Reddit since making their update. Hopefully they've been able to move on from the situation and live their life in private.
What if you were out of town and when you get back, your neighbour tells you that they spotted a tent in your living room? That was what happened to this Redditor. I honestly don't know what to make of this. The simplest answer is that my neighbour is lying, but why? Here's what happened. This morning, my neighbour knocked on my door and told me that while I was out of town earlier this month, they noticed my front door was open and that a very nice blue and brown two-person tent had been pitched in the middle of my living room. They said they thought it was a little odd, and that's why they mentioned it. I was on vacation over the 4th of July, and my nephew and another neighbour both fed my cat while I was gone. Neither are the type to pitch a tent in my living room, though, to be honest, I'm not sure who would do such a thing anyway. Nevertheless, I asked them about the tent, and of course, neither knew anything about it. I also don't have anything that's blue and brown and could be mistaken for a tent. My living room is mostly black and white. I also don't even own a tent. I'm not a camper. Nobody has a set of keys to my house. I have an Arlo camera by my front door, and I set one up in my living room while I was gone so that I could periodically check in on my cat. I'm a little neurotic about her because she's very old. I checked all the footage going back to June 4th because my neighbour couldn't say for certain when exactly they saw this tent. Needless to say, there is nothing captured by either camera. Unfortunately, the cameras do sometimes fail to capture everything. I'd say they have a 10 to 20% fail rate when it comes to turning on when there's movement. So there is a slight possibility that someone could have entered my house, pitched a tent, taken it down and left, and the cameras wouldn't have caught any of it. But I feel like it's a pretty slim chance that neither would have been triggered. To add to all of this, my cat has been acting super strange since I came back. She is very nervous, refuses to go anywhere near the back part of the house, and is not using her litter box. So something did weird her out. So, Reddit, any ideas? If my neighbour is lying, which is the most plausible, why? They've never lied before, and always seemed like a reliable narrator. They also said their boyfriend saw it too, and mentioned how weird it was. Is there any scenario where it makes sense for someone to break in and pitch a tent, but also leave the door open so anyone can see? Is it a glitch in the Matrix? Is she somehow suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning? Am I? Thankfully, the Arlo camera outside did capture part of our conversation, so I didn't completely imagine it. It's just so bizarre. I'm just at a complete loss. The whole thing has left me feeling unsettled. Opie also took the chance shortly after making the post to answer some questions that had come up in the comment section. To answer some questions that have come up, 1. I took the cat to the vet and she got a clean bill of health. I'm trying some behavioural solutions, multiple litter pans, special cat food for urine health, calming cat treats, calming spray, fail-away plug-in, etc. It's been hard, but I'm committed to helping her get through this. 2. The neighbour and her boyfriend are both older, I think in their late 60s, and we live on the same property, so she has to walk by my front door to get to the street. I'd say from the walkway to my front door is less than 5 feet, so she has a pretty good view of my living room. I agree with those who said that her timing is strange, why mention it weeks later? But I had recently talked to her about my cat's behaviour, so I think she mentioned it as a possible reason for the cat's behaviour. She did say, maybe in the future you should let me know you'll be out of town so I can keep an eye out for you. At the time, it sounded like a normal thing to say, but if she's lying, then maybe it's because she wants to know when I'm gone? My nephew is in his mid-20s and very responsible. He owns his own home and works long days. Neither he nor his brother are campers, and as far as I know, don't own any tents. The camera outside captured him entering and exiting all 3 days, and he was in the house for less than 5 minutes. Same with the other neighbour who fed the cat. She came over 3 times, all for less than 5 minutes. Neither was aware of where the camera was inside. They knew I had one though, so I could check the cat. The camera also caught the cat chilling out in the house, and all 3 days she was acting normally. 4. Today I learned about frogging. There is a crawl space under the house, but you can't access it from the inside. There's probably a 2-foot high crawl space in the ceiling that you can access from the closet in my bedroom, but I have a bunch of boxes and suitcases shoved up against the opening, and I really don't see how someone could put them back if they had crawled back in. I will say that the more I ruminate on it, the creepier it seems. This is extremely strange, so let's discuss the possibilities. It's likely that the neighbours did see something, but simply mistook it for a tent. Considering that people OP knew were in the house while they were gone, there is a good chance that they saw people inside, maybe saw them doing something, and mistook an object for a tent. Admittedly, this does seem unlikely. The other possibility that people pointed out is that they actually did see a tent, but it wasn't in OP's house. It could be easy for them to mistake house numbers, so what if another neighbour did have a tent up, and this is simply a case of confusion? It's also incredibly likely that the neighbour may have dementia or something similar. Although what does stand out as weird is that her boyfriend corroborates the story, maybe pointing towards one of the other options instead. However, OP does mention that the neighbour is keeping a journal where they note down all of the strange things that they have been experiencing recently. And according to a few replies, other commenters recall their relatives doing the same sort of thing when they started to suffer from dementia. The fact that OP has a camera as well does indicate that nothing was actually going on. While it is true that sometimes cameras can miss out on recording movement, it doesn't seem likely that someone would have been able to put up and take down an entire tent without a sliver of footage being captured. One thing that stands out to me though is the strange behaviour of the cat. This does point towards the possibility that something happened while OP was away, but I suppose we could write it off as a bunch of other things, even the cat just missing their owner. There is an update to this story, and this is what it says. So I spoke to all my neighbours again today. The neighbour who saw the tent is still adamant that that is what she saw. She said she and her boyfriend saw it around lunchtime, and he confirmed. They said the tent was up when they went to lunch and down by the time they came back. When I told her my cameras didn't catch anything, she was unbothered. When suggested that maybe she saw something else, she said it was not my imagination. I saw a tent from right here, And then she stood on the walkway and pointed into my house. She seems to think someone might have a copy of my key and is accessing my house whenever I am out of town. She thinks someone sabotaged both cameras and mentioned black suits that aren't picked up by security cameras as a reason that the tent sector wasn't caught. She also mentioned that my other neighbour, the one who checked in on my cat, had a large white tent in her yard a few months back. I saw that tent and can verify it existed, but this neighbour said that that is not the tent that she saw in my house. I rechecked all the camera footage one more time. There are no unaccounted for gaps. In fact, there are several snippets of the cat chilling in the living room, looking completely unconcerned before and after the cat sitters came into the house. It's actually making me rethink the timeline of when she got spooked. I rechecked the attic access and it hasn't been touched. I also work from home, so it would be hard for someone squatting in the attic to go unnoticed. I also took the advice here to check the internet data and electricity usage. Both were down on the days I was gone. My gas bill was smaller as well. But if the tent was only up for an hour, that makes sense. So then I spoke with cat-sitting neighbour. She confirmed the existence of her white tent and explained that she was airing it out in her front yard after a camping trip, which aligns with all the tent care information in the comments. She also said that she has had similar conversations with this neighbour, where what she is saying is bizarre and unsettling, but she says it with such conviction that you find it hard not to believe. She also understood my unease, saying that the whole story reminded her of the Manson family and their creepy crawling. Once she mentioned that possibility, it made me understand why I was feeling so anxious. I have read about the creepy crawling, and the Manson family was a boogie monster for me growing up. For those worried about my cat's well-being, thank you. She seems to be slowly coming back to herself. Right now, I'm putting her in the kitchen at night, and she has a cozy little bed where she sleeps. So far, she hasn't peed anywhere inside since I've started doing this, but I do wake up before 6 every morning to let her out, and she promptly uses the litter pan I have set up for her on the porch. I also started using the urinary health cat food from Royal Canin that someone suggested on another thread, and that seems to be working. Fingers crossed. To end on a lighter note, cat-sitting neighbour also had a whimsical explanation, not to be taken seriously and just for fun, that I also thought I'd share. Apparently, there's a Japanese folklore tradition of trickster raccoons who shapeshift and wreak havoc. She pointed out that it is raccoon season where we live, and in fact, I just saw a mother and her babies by my porch a couple of nights ago, and maybe they snuck in and pitched the tent just to mess with me. I mean, it's as probable as anything else at this point. Next steps: asking the landlord to change the locks. And finally, OP provides a final series of updates, and it confirmed to a lot of commenters that one theory was more plausible than the others. This update will probably be more than a little anticlimactic, and for that, I apologise. To the people who felt there was much ado about nothing, I agree, but like I said before, it's her continued insistence and certainty about this bizarre idea that niggles me. So here we go. 1. The boyfriend does indeed exist. I've met him and spoken with him several times. He seems older than her, and is quieter overall. He has stated that he is a cat person and has engaged with my cat in the past, but I have not had the chance to talk to him separately to get his side of the story. The white tent was in the front yard of my other neighbour's house and faces the opposite street, so a reflection is impossible. That being said, the older neighbour does keep bringing it up, and is convinced that people were sleeping in it. I've spoken with the front yard neighbour, and she was airing out the tent after a camping trip. No one ever slept in it when it was in her yard. But I think a lot of folks in the comments are correct when they say the white tent unsettled the older neighbour, because she brought it up several times. I did loop in the landlords, but they seem to also believe the older neighbour. She has rented from them for at least 15 years, if not longer, and they told me that in the past she has been very reliable and truthful. They seemed spooked by the whole story and offered to change the locks. I figured it can't hurt, so I agreed. The landlords and I questioned the older neighbour pretty rigorously, and she stuck by her story, even as we all expressed incredulity. She reiterated that she saw a two-person tent, blue and white, fully erected in my front living room. She said it was not a pop-up tent or pup tent. She said she saw it on a Wednesday because that's the day that her boyfriend takes her to lunch each week. She said it was up when he picked her up and down when he dropped her off. She got a little defensive as we probed, so people who warned that this could happen if we challenged her were spot on. She kept reiterating that it was a tent and that she could see it quite clearly. She seems to want to pin it on my nephew, and the landlord seemed to be leaning that way too, which is really frustrating. He's a 25-year-old man with his own home. He has no need to air a tent out in my tiny living room, and he doesn't even camp. The cameras. I double checked every Wednesday for the last 2 months. That's the limit for the stored videos. No tent, no people entering my house, no footage of her and her boyfriend staring into my house. That being said, there is one Wednesday with no footage because the battery had died and I forgot to charge it. But I was home. There's only one Wednesday that I went out of town, but I left after 4 PM and returned in less than 24 hours. I still feel like this is pretty solid evidence of no tent, but I have to allow for the fact that the cameras were not fully operational. The cat is slowly getting better, though we had a setback today when she peed in the kitchen after the gardeners scared her. She is consistently using the litter pan I set up for her outside with no problem. She just refuses to use any litter pan anywhere inside. I have one in the kitchen, one by the front door, one in the pantry, and one in the bathroom. She will only use the one outside. I do think the calming food is helping her since we're down to just one accident and it was on the puppy pads. I am keeping her in the kitchen at night and letting her out before 6 AM every day. Hopefully, I can eventually get her to use her litter pan inside. Raccoon season. I think my front neighbour used this phrase because it's baby season right now. We have a mum and 2 kits that hang out in our property. If you have never seen a baby raccoon, then you're missing out. I put one on screen for your viewing pleasure. They are adorable. So, like I said at the beginning, not much of a resolution. At this point, I just want to put the whole thing to rest. I'm changing the locks, so if there are mystery indoor campers or mischievous raccoons with a copy of my key, they'll have to find another locale for their shenanigans. I'll stop questioning the neighbour because she's adamant, and now it feels a little weird to keep harping on it. I'll endeavour to be patient and kind to my cat so that she gets back to her old self. The neighbour and landlords trying to pin it on OP's nephew is certainly strange, and for a lot of people, it did confirm the initial theory that a lot stated, that the neighbour has some form of dementia. Who knows though, maybe OP does have a secret group of people, or raccoons, using their home while they are away. So take this as your sign to maybe do a more thorough check the next time that you hear an unexplained sound in your house. A Redditor was disturbed when a creepy, cryptic letter was mailed to their house. I got this weird letter in the mail with no return address, and it had, what I found out after googling it, a suture in it. I reverse image searched the weird little drawn symbol on the button and nothing came up. It is probably just a prank or something, but I don't know. It's really weird. I don't have any friends or family members who work at hospitals, so I don't think it's anyone I know. If anyone knows what this letter or random letters mean, if anything at all, or know why there is a suture and a random symbol, let me know. I also don't know any James, and the date doesn't mean anything to me. I wasn't even alive then. Very concerning, and all the commenters agreed. According to OP, the letter was addressed directly to their house, but it contained no name. This indicated to people that it was not directed at OP, but rather maybe the people who had lived there before, or just a general prank that could be seen as disturbing. However, OP disputes this, saying that they are the only person who has lived in the house in the past 10 years. So what are the chances that someone would have waited all that time until another occupant moved in to send this letter? It seems unlikely. One commenter brute forced the cipher and came back with this disturbing piece of text, which other Redditors helped to make sense of. Be careful and don't screw the pooch. If you don't watch it for you, and Nico do het, watch backs. He stabs him. A very unsettling message, and some people have compared it to the phrase snitches get stitches, and it has to be said that it does ring very similar. Some people theorized that this could potentially be a squatter. If the house had been unoccupied for almost a decade, then it would have been the perfect home for someone trying to fly under the radar, and now they could potentially be having a bit of a mental breakdown as a result of the new tenancy. Another commenter pointed out that this message was dated 40 years to the day after OP received it. This just added to the threat, as it almost read as a precaution. And disturbingly, the story doesn't end there, because OP's update makes the entire situation much more concerning. This all started with a weird letter I got a couple of days ago with a sutcher. I assumed it was a prank, but no. They have slashed my box with cameras and left another weird letter stabbed to the box with a box cutter. I called the non-emergency line and sent the pictures to the police, but they basically said since they didn't take the cameras, they can't really do anything. If anyone has any tips or anything I can do to get the police to take my concerns more seriously, please let me know. Not only was the first letter weird, but it's even more concerning that the mystery person has returned to the residence to leave another, this time leaving a disturbing trail. And clearly, they want OP to know what they are saying, because this time, the letter they left is not locked behind a cipher. It reads, "Cameras are silly when Nico is always watching." This is another letter dated for the 5th of May 1985, so that date clearly has some meaning behind it. And it seems as though the writer realised their mistake last time out, because this time, the message is not written on a printed piece of paper. As some commenters pointed out, paper that is printed has marks left on it that can be used to track down the exact details of what printed it and when. So this time, to be on the safer side, they have instead written their message on a Domino's napkin, leaving the police and OP with no trail back to them. Of course, commenters were immediately concerned. Although at first this could have been written off as a simple prank, this has now entered disturbing territory. This is now, very clearly, a threat. Since the package was vandalised, that means that whoever wrote this letter now has OP's full name, even though they didn't to start with. They also know that there are cameras inside the box and will potentially be more careful going forward. It's definitely wise to keep harassing the police about this, because this is a threat and they can't wait until something serious happens to OP before they take action. That's the case with far too many scenarios. Someone has to get seriously harmed before we see real change, and we should be better than that. They provided one more update, saying that the cameras haven't captured anything, and that they hadn't been bothered in the days since. They also confirmed that the police were sending someone out once a shift to make sure that there were no concerning individuals lurking around OP's home. They stopped posting in the months following these posts, but they did return to their usual posting habits. They haven't updated their profile in 3 months though, so we can only hope that they are doing well. A very disturbing story, and one that we don't have an ending to. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video if you did enjoy. Remember to hype it as well, all of that means the world to me. And thank you so much to morbidforfun for narrating one of these stories. His channel will be linked in the description and on the end screen, so make sure you check him out. Let me know in the comments what you thought of these stories and which one creeped you out the most. Don't forget to check me out on social media. I have Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And if you want to get involved with the community, you can join my Discord server using the link in the description. Thank you so much to my Jessicur Plus members Morrigan, Alex Rod, K4 Silver, Entrepreneur, Galacti Key, Brooke, Carmilla, Basefinger, Midnight Kitty, Willow, Briar, Fezzy, Shoshka, Frozen Roses, Greenlee, Snail Namgyu, JM3112, River Camera, and Jessicur. And speaking of, I just launched my brand new membership system, Jessicur Plus. For $7.50 per month, you can get access to over 100 videos, some that will never be released on YouTube. And you can also get uncensored videos and my full breakdown of the IRL predator catch that I did back in April, which will be coming to the platform very soon. Go to jessicur.com for more information. I'll be back very soon with another video, but if you want another right now, then YouTube thinks that you'll like the video that's on your screen.